Hey there, and welcome to The Explainer. We're going to talk about something that pretty much everyone with a hearing aid has felt at some point. Just pure frustration. We're going to dive in and turn those super common device problems into solutions that are actually simple and, honestly, pretty empowering.
So, have you ever had that moment, that sinking feeling where your device just isn't working? It's whistling, or the sound is weak, or maybe it's completely silent. Yeah, if that sounds familiar, you are in exactly the right place. We are going to walk through the fixes for all of these, one by one.
All right, first things first, let's tackle the hearing aid itself. Because here's the thing, before you even think about making that call for a repair, you gotta know that most of the day-to-day glitches have fixes that are surprisingly simple. Fixes you can do yourself, right at home. Okay, let's start with the most basic thing, comfort. If your hearing aid is uncomfortable, or maybe even a little painful, it just feels wrong. The problem is almost always the fit. So, step one, just try taking it out and carefully putting it back in. But if it still doesn't feel right, don't just suffer through it. That's your cue to see your dispenser and get it refitted.
So what about when the sound is just weak? You can barely hear anything. Well, before you instinctively reach to crank up the volume, hold on. Check for two super common culprits first. It could be a little bit of gunk partially blocking the ear molt, an easy clean. Or, even simpler, it might just be a dying battery.
Oh, and then there's the dreaded whistle, right? That high-pitched squeal. That's called feedback, and what's happening is basically a sound loop. The amplified sound escapes your ear and then, boop, gets picked right back up by the microphone. It almost always means something just isn't sitting quite right. Maybe it's the aid itself, maybe a bit of earwax is in the way, or it could even be a tiny little crack in the tubing. All right, now for what might be the most maddening issue of all. When the sound cuts in and out. 1 second it's fine, the next, nothing. It can really feel like the whole thing is broken. But you know what? The fix is usually surprisingly simple. So, when that sound starts cutting out, it's time to play detective. Your first and most likely suspect, the battery. Just pop in a fresh one and see what happens. Still having trouble? Okay, next step. Gently clean the battery contacts with a dry swab. If that doesn't do it, check the cord for any visible breaks, and try wiggling the controls a bit to knock any dust loose. Seriously, this little checklist right here, it'll solve the mystery 9 times out of 10.
And what if there's just nothing? Total silence. Okay, before you panic and assume the worst, just run through this super quick mental checklist. Is the battery totally dead? Or, hey, is it just an upside down? It happens. Is the tubing completely blocked? Or maybe, just maybe, it got switched to the T setting, the telecoil, by mistake. Just check these simple things first. It could save you a lot of worry.
Okay, so let's say you've done all that. Your device is clean, it's got a fresh battery, it's working perfectly. You're all set, right? Well, kinda. Because getting the hardware working is really only half the battle. The real challenge, a lot of the time, isn't the device at all.
I mean, this is the real-world challenge, isn't it? Your hearing aid might be absolutely perfect when you're having a quiet one-on-one chat. But what happens when you walk into a noisy restaurant or a big, echoey theater? All of a sudden, that background noise just becomes this overwhelming wall of sound.
And this is where we have to start thinking beyond just the hearing aid. It's time to expand our toolkit, Let's talk about some other tech that's designed specifically for these kinds of tough listening situations.
This stuff is called hearing assistive technology, or, much easier to say, HATs. A good way to think of them is like specialized gear. They're the tools you pull out when your hearing aid, on its own, just isn't quite enough to get the job done.
So what do they actually do? Well, the main job of any HAT is to solve one fundamental problem, the signal-to-noise ratio. That's a fancy way of saying they make the sound you want to hear, like someone's voice, way, way louder than all the background noise you don't want to hear.
Generally, these tools fall into one of two buckets. You've got your personal HATs. These are devices you carry around with you for your own use. And then you have group or public systems, which are the ones that are actually built into places like theaters or big meeting rooms for anyone to use.
Okay, so let's dive into the toolkit itself. First up, FM systems. The easiest way to picture these is like having your very own personal radio station, broadcasting crystal clear sound.
The person speaking wears a tiny microphone, and it sends their voice wirelessly over an FM signal.
And that signal goes straight to a little receiver that's connected to your hearing aid. You see these a ton in schools because they're amazing at cutting right through all that classroom chatter so a student can hear the teacher's voice and nothing else. All right, next up, we have a technology that you've probably used before and maybe didn't even realize it. We're talking about infrared systems. Now, instead of radio waves like an FM system, these use something totally different: invisible light beams to send the sound. So if you've ever been to a big theater or a cinema and they hand you a special headset, that's probably an infrared system. You wear a receiver that catches those light signals and turns them back into perfectly clear sound. It's a fantastic solution for places where you need to keep the audio locked inside that one room. And this next one, this one is really, really clever. It's an induction loop system, and it works with a feature that a lot of hearing aids already have built right in. It's called the telecoil or T-coil. So here's how it works. There's a wire that runs around the perimeter of a room, and it creates this invisible magnetic field. When you flip your hearing aid over to the T setting, it picks up that magnetic signal directly. It's totally seamless. You'll find these a lot in places like churches, meeting halls, and even at bank teller windows. So, okay, we've got FM systems, infrared, induction loops. There are a bunch of options out there. Which brings us to the big question, right? How in the world do you choose the right tool for you? Well, the most important thing to get is that there's no single best device. There's only the best device for you, for your life. You've got to think about things like your specific degree of hearing loss, what kinds of places you go to most often, and of course, does it work with the hearing aids you already have? It's all about building a personalized toolkit. And you know, that really brings us to the biggest takeaway from all of this. Your hearing aid? It's an absolutely critical tool. It's the starting point, but it's not the only tool. The real goal here is to build a whole hearing solution that's customized for you and actually works in your day-to-day life.
At the end of the day, managing your hearing is an active process. It's not just about popping in a device and hoping for the best. It's about actively building out that toolkit and, knowing which tool to grab for which situation. So I'll just leave you with this thought. Now that you have a better idea of what's out there, what's the first new tool you're going to explore to enhance your hearing world?